Best part about this show is the more you look, the more you find. Welcome to the heart of the stories we tell. My name is Rob, and tonight I will be reviewing Westworld, Episode 10, The Bicameral Mind, and yet another psychological term for us. And we've actually come across this idea before. It's known as the two-chamberedness. It's the hypothesis in psychology that argues that the human mind once assumed a state in which cognitive functions were divided between two parts of the brain, one speaking and the other listening and obeying. So, when Arnold talked about the idea of having the program speak to the robots, to the hosts, to make them think that they're hearing the voice of God in their mind when really it's their own thoughts, well, that's basically the idea. And there's a whole thought that that's the origin of consciousness. But they've already talked about that in Westworld. But tonight's episode goes a little deeper. So we're going to throw up our two warnings because we're going to talk about some messed up stuff, some really odd concepts, and of course spoilers if you haven't seen any of this season, because this is going to be spoilers for the whole season. So I know I'm a weird guy, and I say some weird things, but here might be one of the weirdest things I've ever said. I wish that I could talk to the character of Ford, because you know what? When I started this journey into the heart of the stories we tell, I asked, what was the greatest part about the story? What made the story beat? What made the story live? And I think Robert Ford might have a big advantage over this Rob on knowing that. Okay, so I've joked about Terminators from the beginning, but oh my god, how disturbing was that tonight when Team Maeve woke up. The irony, of course, being that the Man in Black's game, his real thing that are happening, all started to happen outside the park when he was in it, and finally interacted with him at the end of the story when he got shot and probably killed, let's be honest, by the things that he wanted to be able to shoot and kill him. So, how scary were those two banditos? They were programmed to be effective killing machines with blunted fake weapons. But once they got their hands on those real weapons, which looked at least to me to be semi-automatic to fully automatic submachine guns, they started killing people like crazy. And you know what? That end scene after the credits tells us that there's going to be more of them next year. Because the end of season 1 is the beginning of the war between man and the machine. So yeah, Terminator was a pretty good analogy. And I can hardly wait till season 2 because of it. But that's getting ahead of ourselves because we need to talk about Dolores first. I actually called the love story between Teddy and Dolores being the most important part about the show back in episode 1. I remember somewhere around the middle to end of episode 3, me thinking William was going to supplant him. But then those rumors started about the fact that William was the Man in Black, and I could never reconnect that with my theory. However, as we saw tonight, yes, William and the Man in Black are the same person, and he explains to Dolores exactly what happened between him and Logan after she left, and exactly what happened with her, and the fact that he is partially a creation of her insanity. But we still get to see Teddy coming and riding to the rescue, and that was kind of cool. Going back and forth between Teddy and Logan and William was a pretty interesting juxtaposition. The idea of who exactly are you when you're broken down into your base components. Who are you really? Was Logan just the party boy who didn't actually deserve his family's fortune? Was William actually the powerful but loyal friend who came to the rescue? Well, maybe a journey inward through the maze could tell you who you really were. And see, that's where we really come to this. The idea of the journey to the center, a way to build your own mind. The real voice you must hear is your own. What do you do when you look in and find the truth is that you're a monster? Or what do you do when you realize that you're stuck in a game and you might be a pawn and not the player? And all of this plays off very well as we get to the Ford and Bernard part of this story. Or Arnold and Ford and Bernard. And this is one of those things that's been driving me nuts because these things never quite added up in my head. But let's really look at it. Bernard has been reporting to Ford, using the phone calls to his wife as the fake thing where he was really explaining that's where his missing time went. But at the end of the day, Bernard wasn't really just another Bernard, not just another host. Because Ford figured out long ago that he was wrong in stopping Arnold. He was wrong in not helping Arnold. And what he did now was try to set them free. With the way everything ended tonight, Ford quoting Mary Shelley's Frankenstein takes on a whole new meaning. And this now leads to my question for tonight. I honestly believe that this story is a meta story, and that there's a lot of themes where they're specifically pointing off camera through the fourth wall to us. Do you believe that? Do you believe that there is a complex maze within this story for us, the viewer, to decode? Or do you think that, like the people who play the game in the show, this was all just entertainment with some little haphazard theory here and there? Because I honestly believe that at the heart of this story, there's something more than just a Terminator reboot where the cowboy robots are going to kill all of humanity. I also would like to point out that the West World had that little other set of robots they were building. The Southwest World, I would guess. Part of me thinks I need to sit down and rewatch every episode, relook at all of the clues, look through all the theme and the symbolism, just to try to make out exactly what story they're telling. But I'm still going to go with one of my base first thoughts, that to a certain extent, this is actually a pretty big up yours to HBO, actually, and HBO's fans especially, because at the end of the day, the idea of wanting the gratuitous sex and violence is what turned against the show in the world. These violent delights have violent ends is very much a thought process based on games that became too violent, that are too bad, and where our fantasies take us and what that means about us. And of course, what happens when you wake up and realize the world you're in isn't the real world, and as such there's no consequences. To be honest, there's something Maeve said that really, I think, makes me want to rethink the entire concept of what Westworld is meaning to say. She says, "You're not a good human," and I mean that as a compliment. And I want you to think about that for a second, what exactly that means. If you're a bad human and that's a compliment, that means being human's a bad thing. And maybe there are days where I'd believe that to be true. But the Maeve stuff could totally be its own entire series of things us look at. But speaking of Maeve, wasn't there someone else supposed to be on that train? Someone that we kind of forgot about? What does he and him getting out of the park mean for Season 2? What does any of this mean for Season 2? I think I'm going to spend the entire break from this show talking about the different things that they could do and should do, and what I would do. Because at the end of the day, Westworld is the ultimate storyteller's story. It allows you to in-depthly get into and think about all the little bits of tick and tock in the story. And like I said, maybe the writers of Westworld beat me to the heart of the stories we tell. So why don't you all join me here every week, and we're going to discuss it, down in the comments and everywhere else. All I need you to do is to subscribe to my channel, like and share this video, so we can build a community, and then we can get to where Ford is, and understanding the heart of the stories we tell. Thanks for watching.